Mural Joe here. I'm going to show you how to draw an eye. It's not going to be in how much detail, but how well you do the details. Okay, yeah, here, let's do eye to eye. Okay, this is the eye that I drew. Now you can see the first thing I'm doing is the middle of the eye, just getting the value right. So I'm going to start just by doing that really dark little pupil in there. I'm just going to pick, little white random shape in the middle of it. That shadow across the top is going to represent a reflection of the upper eyelid on a wet eyeball. There's a lot of fluid on the front of the eye that's in between that colored part of the eye and the, whatever you call the surface of the eye, cornea. The underside of it actually is brighter than the top side because of the way the light comes out. It's the same with the drop of water. The light comes in the top, and then even though the light's coming from the top, it's not the top of the drop of water that's lit. And so you can see that the white of the eye, as I'm making now, I'm actually shading darker than the colored part of the eye because that contrast will cause that three-dimensional popping look on the eye. So now I'm doing the underside of the eye. I have to remember as I'm doing the skin tone that needs to eventually be a little bit darker than the white of the eye. It's not very much because the white of that eye is in a shadow. Throw in some little eyelids on there. You can see I left a strip of light in between the values. That wherever you have the skin, wherever the skin comes to a edge, well, the light hits that edge, and since it usually has moisture on it, there's a lot of glare, reflection on it. And so those little white strips in between the shaded areas look like light bouncing off of a moist flesh, And so the same thing with the corner of the eye. You can see as I darken the areas around those little white strips, it'll start to look like a more reflective surface, like a wet eye. Every drawing and every painting, likewise, you want to try to utilize your full spectrum to get the most out of it. And so I'm gonna have a area on every drawing I do that's as black as I can make it with the pencil. I need to make sure I get it real dark coming down out of that so that it drops back in that eye socket. So I'm just using those shadows and real soft, just where parts go deeper in, I'm just shading those more. I'm gradually trying to go over the whole picture and get things darker that need to be darker, like right there in the corner of the eye. I want that white to pop a little more, so I'll darken that corner. That sharp line that I do around the edge of the eye, a lot of times there's a shadow in between the eyeball and the eyelid, and just by doing that dark outline, but notice that I didn't do it all the way across. It switches from a dark line to white space. You can see that there's reflection on my eye because it's wet, and so those are the areas that I left white. On this edge of my eye, you might see a shadow that's in between the eyelid and the eyeball. And on the top side, likewise, you see a shadow there. And so you'll have a dark outline around a lot of the eye, but then other areas where the water on your eye is catching the light, that's where you just leave white space. Just getting those values balanced. It's amazing what just getting the right things to the right darkness, lightness, darkness. That's what I mean when I say value. Eyebrows all have the same pattern. So maybe you're making up an eyeball. You can draw a crazy old dragon eye or something. They all have the same pattern here. Okay, the hairs always go outward towards the edge, to the outer edge of the eye socket, up to a certain point. When they get to the nose, they start bending upward, and they have this swooping pattern, like this. Eyebrow hairs on the top, and they go down this way. They go that way, and the ones on the bottom come up this way, like that. So they kind of all taper like this. I shade the bottom edges of those hairs darker because you can see that an eyebrow catches the light, and then there's darker hairs on the bottom side and lighter hairs on the top side. I need to the look of actually I'm not gonna bother.